Hey everybody, welcome to the Westside Fairytales Horror and Lit Club episode for March 2020. Today we're going to be talking about Night of the Hunter, the book, and the movie. But before that, talk about some other stuff, man. It's crazy out there, isn't it? It's coronavirus time. If you're listening to this in the future and assuming that we're not all dead, hey, I hope we make it. Oh man, but looking back on this is going to be crazy. I always think about stuff when I'm going through it, like as the way it's going to be told in a story, because if I don't do that, then I'm, what the fuck am I even doing with that's my bread and butter. That's how I do. You know what I mean? But dude, this is crazy. I did not think that this coronavirus thing was gonna be this nuts. You know what I mean? And whether or not you're sort of buying into the hype, or you really do believe that it's crazy or that it's overblown, there are no arguments at all that it is wild outside right now. Everything's empty. Let's tell a story today. We went and got bagels. Well, I went and got bagels because we were hungover, and it's my job to go and fetch the hangover food, which is fine with me. But I went to go get bagels, right? And the bagel place, you had to like ask to go in, right? You're not allowed to come in and sit down. The governor's outlawed like anybody, groups of 100 or more, throughout the state. So a lot of the restaurants are shut down. But even in this little place, the cook had a bandana over his face, like a fucking, like a Western bandit. And I was like, that's pretty fucking wild. And then an old lady came in, and she had a bandana on too. And it's not like they knew each other. They weren't working together, but that's just wild to me. That's wild that this is happening like this. Now I know whose mailing list I'm on. I don't know if this is happening to everybody else, but I mean, it has to be, because every single company, even if it's a company that I would never go to physically because it's, online or something, are sending me emails like, during this time of crises, these are the precautions we're taking. I'm like, I don't give a fuck. LinkedIn. I don't give a shit. Amazon, what the fuck you're doing during this. I just hope that you deliver the packages and stuff. Chipotle sent me some stuff, and I was like, okay, this is ridiculous. But then they also sent me a thing like, don't come in. We're giving you free delivery. Just stay outside, which is wild. But it's crazy. We're getting all these emails and stuff. I think here at the Westside Fairytales, we are not. I'm not gonna have any of my staff in because I have no staff but me. I don't know what to say. But man, I hope everybody's doing okay out there. I know we have some older listeners, so if you're out there and you're a little old, or you're young and possibly going to typhoid marry all of the elderly people in your life to death, just stay inside. Stay inside. Wash your hands. Hey, I know there's a lot of horror fans out there. I probably don't need to tell you that. You're already just, hey, we're on that. We're not going outside for fucking any reason at all. Thank you very much. We're gonna sit in and watch some Shudder. Oh, which, by the way, you guys should absolutely do. This isn't a paid sponsorship or anything, but if you didn't know, Shudder, which is a great online horror streaming site, is giving away a month free right now with the code SHUTIN, SHUTIN, and you can get a month free on Shudder. So definitely take advantage of that, because that's just great. Normally you only get like a week or 2 weeks with them, but this is a whole month. So, check it out, and then you can, well, none of these recommendations are on the list, but tons of the recommendations that I've made movie-wise throughout the history of the podcast are available on Shudder. Sometimes they are, sometimes they're not, but usually they are. So, man, yeah, like it is pretty wild out there. So I hope you're all taking care of yourself, and I hope you're all doing great, man. I really do. I didn't take this too serious, because I don't believe anything that I hear in the news, because I worked in the news, and I've seen that I call it like editing creep, where a story starts one way, like, hey, this thing happened, And then, you know, it goes to the first editor and then the second editor, and they're like, well, that's the real key part of the story. A little bit here gets shaved off, a little bit there gets shaved off. You lose a little context. And then by the time, you know, that story reaches the national stage, it's like fucking different than what you wrote. You're like, what the fuck is this even? And people are like mad at you. Like you're misrepresenting them. Like, this isn't my fault. I didn't do this. But man, it is fucking wild out there, and I hope you're all being safe. Enough of that. Stuff I've been watching. We're gonna do that real quick. What have I been watching? I just finally watched the original Texas Chain Saw Massacre last night. I feel like I'd seen it before, but I might have just like hallucinated that I had. It's great, by the way. If you haven't seen the Texas Chain Saw Massacre, you should absolutely check it out. I don't know who the fuck I'm telling that to. like people don't already know. I've seen so many Texas Chain Saw Massacre movies, but I guess I just never saw the original one. I guess I just watched all these like remakes in the mid 2000s. And you know, I'm only 32, so there's not much time that I had to, you know, watch a movie that came out almost 20 years before I was born. So, but it's great. It's actually good. It's not just like slashery. It's almost not even a slasher. I would say it's definitely the best of the original, you know, the big four. If I had to rank them in order, it would go Nightmare, Chainsaw. I wish there was, and then you know, Halloween, and then I wish there was some like gap, like a big gap, like I could just jam something in there so people knew there was supposed to be like a fourth and a fifth and a sixth place, and then I would put Friday the 13th on there, which is that is a franchise that is just abused to death. And it's like, it's so weird. I don't get Friday the 13th. I mean, I get it. And if you don't know anything about it and you're just like kind of like one of those sort of horror fans, like the first Friday the 13th movie doesn't even have Jason Voorhees in it, really. I mean, technically, and there's people that are just screaming into their car radios right now, he's in it at the end. But you know, it's not even a hockey mask. You don't even see the Jason Voorhees hockey mask, like the iconic Jason Voorhees, until like I think the third fucking movie. Like Friday the 13th Part 1 and 2 are just nuts. They're not bad movies, like compared to other things that exist inside the slasher genre. I just think they get way too much credit. I don't know how they have so much staying power. It's wild, especially considering like you can't even make a fucking Friday the 13th movie anymore, which I don't know if you really need to. There's already 20 of them from the 90s and 80s. And if you're a huge fan of Friday the 13th, don't let me rain on your parade. It's definitely, you know, like anything in the horror genre, I feel like it's you just acquire tastes for something. So there's some people out there that just like love Friday the 13th. It's just my buddy Kent, who lives in Kentucky too. I think he loves that movie most of all of the originals. I can't remember. I think we actually had this conversation, but we were a bit drunk, so I can't remember where he placed them. But ultimately, yeah, Chainsaw, dude. Chainsaw's at my top, and it's fresh. I wish I could talk more about it. You know what? Why not? I can. This is my fucking podcast. Who am I? I love that movie. Franklin in his wheelchair. You don't see enough like good handicapped people, like good handicapped characters in like horror movies, and I wish that was a thing more often. I mean, like every time I see one, it's always somebody's like shoehorned in, and they're like, you know, handicap ends up being some sort of like thing. It like for some reason, you know, like in Signs, the kid's got asthma, which I consider a handicap. I don't know if that's technically true, but I think, you know, your lungs occasionally failing you and possibly potentially killing you is a pretty big handicap in my book. But you know, it's like his handicap is, oh no, he can't breathe, and then it's like at the end he's like, oh, but because he can't breathe, he can't get any fucking alien fog poison, and you know, it's always something stupid like that, you know. somebody's like they have a crutch or whatever, you know, because they're on crutches, and then like they jam the door open with their crutch, like, oh, thank God you were handicapped, or we would have been stuck here. Like, I just want handicapped people to just be a character, which is what Franklin is. He's like irritating and weird. When they pick up the psycho hitchhiker, Franklin's just like egging him on, and everyone else is like, dude, please, Franklin, stop talking to this fucking nutcase. You know, like he's just perfect. He's a great character. He's a character. You know what I mean? He's not like a good guy or a bad guy or anything, but he's not. He doesn't have any of that irritating like silent nobility. Like, we've got this character has had some problems in their life, so you know they have to be fucking Saint Teresa because they only have one leg, or they have cerebral palsy or something like that. Like, dude, just let them be people. Let them be people. Let them make mistakes. And stop making whatever, like, you know, disability aid that they have on their person be a major, like, Deus Ex Machina plot point at the end. Like, maybe not really Deus Ex. I don't know. Maybe it is a Deus Ex. But, you know, stop making it so just banal. You know, like, oh, shit, let's jam a fucking handicapped character in there so that at some point we at least have a wheelchair for this chase. I don't fucking know. I love Franklin for that. It's never even really addressed. It's kind of a hindrance once because he fucking falls down the goddamn hill. But even that, I think the only anyone you could have written any other character. If it was his same character but he wasn't in a wheelchair, he would have still fallen down that hill as a fucking gag with his coffee cup of piss. Like that's just what would have happened, you know. So it wasn't like completely different because he was a handicapped dude. Which I mean, I'm probably going on too much about this, but the movie's great. And I feel like even if I haven't seen it start to finish, I've seen so much of it in chunks. Maybe that's why I have it in my mind. You know, like my favorite part is the first time he slides open that fucking door, or really the second time when the girl's in there looking for her deceased, although she doesn't know it, boyfriend before she gets the meat hook. He slides open that door and you get to see inside the fucking, that red room, the bone room or whatever they call it. Oh man, that is fucking good. And then you see him, and Leatherface is fucking glorious, dude. Like, he's so colorful and bizarre and like creepy, and he runs like a fucking Melvin. Dude, it's so fucking great. Like, he's wonderful because he's just such a representation of that alienness out there. And how about the fucking almost the entire movie takes place during the day? Like, that is my personal thing that I feel like you're actually good at making a horror thing, is if you can put it during the day, because anybody can make the dark scary. Nyctophobia is like one of the most basic human phobias. You know, people don't like it when it's dark. You can't see, it's unnerving. There's monsters out there in the shadows. But dude, if you can set stuff when you can just see, that's money, man. Because that's when most, you know, real life horror happens, in the daytime. People get shot, fucking gazelles get dragged into fucking muddy water puddles in the middle of the savannah and just ripped to pieces. Like, that's the shit, man. It's 24 hours. It's 24 hours. I like it. And man, does he look good. So, dude, yes, absolutely check that out. Another thing I've been watching, or I tried to watch, I gave it my college try, was the Locke and Key series that just got dropped on Netflix. I hate it. I watched one episode. It's not the worst thing ever. The music is fucking garbage, dude. Whoever scored that or made like the deciding moments to like, this is what we should have as the score, should be shot, or at least just strongly consider, you know, getting a new job, because god damn, you fucked that one up sideways. Like, start to finish. It does one of those things. I'll talk a little bit more. I've only watched one episode of it. I might I might try to watch the rest of it. I'll force myself kind of to watch the rest of it. It's not absolutely bad, but it's one of those things. It's fucking Joe Hill. This is his deal. It's like I feel like he's got some sort of fucking genetic thing in him, or maybe it's just he just knows how to rip dad off well enough that every time I fucking get involved with something that he's made, I start to kind of like it. I'm like, all right, premise is good. But then he fucks it up so bluntly that it's like irreparable. And you're like, what? Why did you made me a steak. The steak is perfect. And then you pulled it off of my table as I'm cutting into it and beginning to enjoy it. And you just put it in a microwave. What the fuck is wrong with you? That's like everything with him. I actually read the entirety of the Locke and Key comic series, and I can remember large chunks of it, and I remember liking it a lot. It ends not great. But the series is awesome. But the first episode of the show is a complete chicken out, because they just change it up completely from the first volume of the comic book that I can remember. And I actually remember a lot of it, even though it's been something like, I feel like 6 or 7 years since I finished that. I don't know the exact time when the last one came out, but it was Locke and Key was released serially. So it's 12 episodes or 12 comic books a year for like 4 or 5 years, and those are the volumes. And I think it got up to 5 volumes. Feel free to correct me online if I'm wrong, but I remember most of it, and it was quite good. The house that they have in the show is a pretty good replica. I mean, obviously you're not going to get a perfect house. I remember the one in the comic book looking a little bit more Victorian for some reason. The little gazebo in the well is almost completely perfect, where the kid talks to Echo. There's some mild spoilers for the first episode, but don't worry about it. It's not going to ruin anything. It's not, the show's not that good to ruin. There's no good fucking Shyamalan twist where if you know what the twist is, it's going to ruin it for you. These spoilers are as banal as they could be, but they're kind of necessary for talking about the differences. As I recall, the first episode, or the first volume, the first comic book in the series, just goes right into this kid's family's murder, right? Like, it just starts off with a brutal, assault on the main character, who's also named Tyler, unfortunately. I fucking hate my name. It gets used by all the worst people. But it starts with this crazy murder, and that's really what got me into it. I was like, oh fuck, they're just killing off, high-end characters, and like seriously upsetting the balance of the family we only just sort of gotten to. And then there's funerals and stuff, and they move to this new town, and then they move to the Key House place, which is the start of everything. And it's well balanced. It's really good. It got me into the comic books. Like I said, I read the whole damn thing, start to finish, and it was good. The show dicks around and fucks around with it, and it's so weird. There's something about the show where it has this feel where the director or the writer, maybe both, have only half of a vision, and they're trying to ape off somebody else's style, although I don't know who it would be. But you can tell that they're trying to do something without really knowing how to do it. It's like watching somebody that just picked up guitar for the first time trying to play jazz music, or like a good blues riff, E7 to A7. Is that right? I can't remember. But just that and like, just messing up the rhythm and stuff because they're a beginner. But then like, for some reason, you have this massive amount of production value around it. So like every one of their mistakes is extremely played out. Like it's so amateurish, I think is what the real word I'm looking for. It feels almost like somebody that directed just countless episodes of Seventh Heaven decided, like, this is the day I get into horror. There's no tension building. There's no there's no like good. There's no tension building. I mean, like, I can really just stop right there. There's no moment where you don't give a fuck about the characters. The characters do they exposit to explain themselves constantly, which is Joe Hill's thing. Instead of like doing shit, you know, it's the old show don't tell, which isn't a hard and fast rule. Eventually you're gonna have to exposit. Everybody does. But he tries to do like this Warren Ellis type thing where it's all cool, snippy dialogue. You know what I mean? A little shit talk about, hey, you know, I didn't know that you were into Muse. Yeah, there's a lot of things you don't know about me. Like, oh, okay, cool. Blah, 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 blah. And then all this, you know, hey, don't you remember that thing that you like doing? Oh, I don't like doing that thing anymore. I'm an adult. Oh my God. Can I talk about that? I fucking hate that trope. I hate when people talk to kids and the kids, like that conversation that always happens, like, Mom, I haven't liked that since grade school. And the mom's like, oh, well, like, well, does that fucking really happen in real life where, like, you just like miss out on your kid becoming a teen? Teenagers are fucking irritating. I don't think there was a moment in my parents' life where they just lost track of how fucking irritating I was becoming. Like, oh, I thought you still loved your teddy bear. Like, what? No one would ever say that to me. If anything, it's usually like one of those kind of like sad moments where, like, oh, you remember when you used to really want to play guitar? Or you remember when you thought that, you know, you might want to try to get a career in drawing? You're like, well, I gave up on that a while ago. And then your parents are like, oh, fuck, time flies kind of thing. You know what I mean? But it's just, I don't know. There's something there to the right, like, to making that sort of interchange work that in this show just does not fly. I don't know if there's a lack of chemistry between the characters or if it's just like that overwritten, I'm a smart motherfucker dialogue that like drives me out. Like, I feel like people watched too many fucking Marvel movies recently, and you know, James Gunn's kind of like shooty back and forth dialogue, that is it's fucking great. It is good dialogue and it works perfectly right there. But it's arrhythmic when you try to put it into, you know, like a horror type show or even like most other types of shows. Anything that's grounded, that kind of snippy, look how fucking smart we are, everyone's got a retort, everyone's got like a fire back. Just doesn't work very good in that setting. Because it's a thing that works when stuff is supposed to be cartoony. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to suspend your belief at all that people can talk like that when the people talking are a fucking tree and a cartoon raccoon. and a lady with antennas and big black bug eyes. Like, that, you're fine. You're just good then. You know what I mean? When people are flying around, that's the top. You know what I mean? That's the upper end of your suspension of disbelief. You can raise your floor up, you know, but you have to have a good maintenance. So like, you couldn't have. It's really difficult to have like a good heart-to-heart conversation about serious shit when you're operating in that spectrum. You can talk about, you know, grand things, you know, simple concepts that kids can understand. Death, love, the end of love, people breaking up, relationships, anything, you know, like, oh, my kids don't understand. Everybody understands death. It's super simple, all right? You go step on an ant, and then the ant stops moving. You're like, oh, shit. And then it grows from there. But, like, you know, harder stuff like grief and dealing with, you know, post-traumatic stress disorder after somebody shoots your fucking father to death in front of you. Like, You can't be having all these snippy conversations and stuff. It doesn't really, it's not really like that in the book either. As far as I remember, I might be talking out of my ass and I'm completely wrong about all these things. By the way, as always, especially if you're new to this and you're just started listening to the Horror and Lit Club episodes, I do not think I'm an authority on everything. These are just my thoughts. If you fucking love Locke and Key, love the shit out of it, I won't judge you, especially because I have to say this on top of everything. In the horror genre, there is no such thing as good. There is only okay and like so bad it's good. I feel like there's a lot of like classics. I mean, we can just switch to this because I feel like I don't want to dog on Locke and Key. I can't recommend it, as I guess what the summation of my ideas is. I can't really recommend Locke and Key. I'm gonna check out Outsiders or The Outsider next because it'll keep me from having to read the book probably, because apparently it's almost exactly the same as far as what I understand. So yeah, I don't have to. I'm sick of giving Stephen King money. I'm sorry. I've given that guy probably like seriously like $400 over the course of my life between royalties from movies that I've watched and actually buying his novels. Maybe it's closer to like $200. Novels aren't that expensive, but that's a lot of fucking money. That's probably about 100 times more than I've given any other author in existence. So I'm done with that. But about horror, it's the one community where a lot of the times some of your favorite movies are flat dog shit. Like they're just fucking bad. Like I was talking about Friday the 13th earlier. There's a lot of people love that franchise. I was talking about my friend Kent, an even better example. His favorite Nightmare on Elm Street movie, aside from Nightmare 1, is Nightmare on Elm Street 4 Dream Warriors. Or it might be 5, but I think it's 4. Which is flat out one of the stupidest fucking movies you'll ever see. But I am completely on board with him when I say I fucking love that film. It's so bad. It's dumb. It's corny. But like it just slaps, dude. It slaps start to finish. It's fun, man. And fun is what you need to be going for. But like it's like I said earlier with, you know, like that floor and ceiling of where you're gonna be and what kind of tone you need to set. That movie is tonally on point, start to finish. It's fucking Robert Englund is just yucking it up. He's maximum, hey bitch, Freddy. At one point, like he pulls some kid's fucking tendons out of his arms. I think this is the same one, and just like walks him off of a building or out a window or something like that. He's just, yeah, I think this is the one where he's up in the sky, like moving the sky like a puppet with his knife fingers. I'm pretty sure that's the one. I get all these things mixed up, but dude, Dream Warrior, man, they go inside the dream. They're all good at video games and shit. One of the kids is like a fucking D&D wizard. And so he goes into the dream and tries to like, blah, and you know, Freddy's dude, absolutely watch Dream Warriors. It's great. But like I said, and especially if you're new to this and you've never heard me like dog people, you know, there's sometimes people just put out a flavor of something that you don't like in the horror genre. I don't like that movie A Quiet Place at all. I think it's fucking stupid. And my fiance got so fucking mad at me when I told her I didn't like it. It almost ended our relationship. Not really, but like she was lit, dude. She was not happy that I was fucking making fun of that movie. It doesn't make any fucking sense. How did some girl's fucking hearing aid get the right tone that made these things fucking heads freak out? But like the United States military, which has actual sound suppression systems, I've seen them in real life. It's a big black disc thing, and they can point it at you, and it just hits you with high sonic. It's the most awful thing ever. Imagine having like a mosquito inside of your brain whining. It's like literally that bad. If we have those, and we have airplanes. How the fuck are these things a problem? It makes no sense. Why would you not live somewhere where your basic sound floor is so high that they can't determine the sound from the sound? That's just the basics of understanding how sound works. Like I can't imagine the sound engineer that was on the staff for this, not just watching it and being like, this makes no sense. You know what I mean? It literally, it flies. There's probably going to be, I know they're making a sequel to it that's probably going to try to, hand wave all these things. But it's the basic function of the physics of sound. You know what I mean? You have a pitch at 5,000 kilohertz. You know what I mean? If there's another pitch at 5,000 kilohertz that's stronger, like it's going to override that. It's going to sync it out. It makes no sense. You would not be able to hear something that's making a noise if something else is making a noise in that frequency that's just as high, and something that's has a gigantic wide band frequency, like water pouring down the side of a mountain so loud that you know how you have to shout to hear over it because your sound waves coming from your throat are being eaten by the much larger, more powerful frequencies coming out of the water. You know what I mean? It would be extremely difficult to find those. I mean, I guess, sure, if you're a creature that has extremely complicated hearing system in your head, sure. But the thing is the more high-tuned your ears are, the more likely they are to be damaged by stuff. And things like gunshots and cannon fire are beyond high pitch. Like, the thing is the air itself gets destroyed. Like an explosion causes cavitation in the air to the point where you can't, there are no sound waves passing there because there is no air anymore. And so it just boom, and it makes that gigantic super high pressure system fly out. And that's actually what causes most of the hearing damage when you shoot guns and stuff, is you actually get air pressure hitting in the inside of your ear. It's just insanely high decibel patterns. I'm probably fucking up a lot of what I'm saying. If you're an actual sound guy, please feel free. By the way, I guess we can do a little sort of semi-break. If you hate what I'm saying, if I'm wrong, if you want to correct me, my understanding of sound physics is, you might not believe this, it's very, very journeyman. Almost, I would say amateurish, in fact. And I'm just a guy on the internet. Even if I ever get published and I make it, like, that doesn't give any of my opinions more credence than other people's. Please, if you disagree with me, if you hate what I'm saying, if you like what I'm saying and you want to agree with me, tell me online. Go to westsidefairytales@gmail.com, drop me a line, and just tell me if you like it, if you don't like it, whatever. It's fine. I like it. I like it when people write me, and I will always write you back. So go ahead and reach out. If you just want to say something online, head on over to the Westside Fairytales Horror and Lit Club on Facebook. It's a closed group, but we'll let you in if you're not a robot, and if you're not one of those weird, like, Bangladeshi scam artists that have started to circle me like fucking gnats ever since I got mildly popular. That they constantly threaten to shut my podcast down if I don't give them money. And they join the groups in the Facebook and stuff, and then they send me spam. But if you're not that, and you like horror, and you like literature, and you like, just talking to people about that, hop on into facebook.com/Westside Fairytales Horror and Lit Club, or go to facebook.com and just look for the Westside Fairytales. We have a normal page on there. I'd appreciate a like if you have a second. Go on our Twitter. I use that sometimes. That's at WS Fairytales. Our Instagram is instagram.com/Westside Fairytales, or just Westside Fairytales in the search bar. You'll get there. And I have started plugging these in the middle of the episodes because I don't have any advertising inventory. If you like the Westside Fairytales Horror and Lit Club, and especially if you like the regular episodes of the Westside Fairytales, please consider supporting us by either buying some merchandise or going on Patreon. These episodes take a lot to produce. This one, obviously, not as much. But the actual Westside Fairytales regular episodes, they take upwards of 40-ish hours per episode, and that's 40 hours of flat nonstop work. It's spread out over, days. So each one of those things is just an immense effort on my part, and it's free, man, and it's always going to be free as far as I'm concerned. You'll always be able to get to the Westside Fairytales content online. If that's something that you think deserves a couple bucks, hey, go to westsidefairytales.com/merch, buy yourself a t-shirt. The profits from those come straight to us, and it helps the podcast stay alive, man. You can get a poster, you could buy some stickers, you could even get a mug, and drink some coffee out of it and show everybody that you love us. Or if you have, if you want to hear stuff like this early, if you want to get access to special behind the scene content, if you like hearing me talk and you want to hear me talk more, hop on our Patreon at patreon.com/westsidefairytales. Throw me $1, you get stuff early, a day early. And if you throw us $5 or more, then we start sending you shit. You'll get a monthly PDF ebook, basically, of the month's story. Then you also get access to behind the story episodes where I talk about my inspiration, why I wrote the story, and what was kind of going on in my mind when I put it all together. And at $10 and more, man, you get free merch. You get super early access to raw episodes of the show. $20, we'll send you a signed poster. And man, if you give me $50, I will print out your story of choice. I will sign it and I will send it to you. That's complete with the artwork from You We Breed Love too. So, and she gets a taste too. She gets royalties off these things. So, hey, if you don't like me, but you like Yui's artwork, buy some stuff from me and she'll get a cut. But I think from there we're going to transition into the meat of the episode and start talking about Night of the Hunter, written by Davis Grubb, a West Virginian native author in 1953. It's a really good book. I'd say it's not maybe necessarily one of my favorites, but it's damn good. It's really damn good. The thing is the film is better. The film is fucking amazing. Let me tell you a little bit about the story and the history. So the story of Night of the Hunter is based on the real-life serial killer Harry Powers. He's a Dutch-born serial killer. He was hanged in Moundsville, which is where Davis was born, in 1932. March 18th, 1932, as a matter of fact. So it's actually almost... What is that? Oh, dude, don't make me do math. 70 plus 20, almost 90 years ago. Almost 90 years ago. That's wild. That is crazy, isn't it? 88 years ago. And he was aged 38 years old. This dude's original name, this is like the best serial killer name ever. His original name from when he was born in the Netherlands is Harm Drenthe. I'm not even kidding. Harm, Harm, Drenthe, Drenth. He was born in 1893 in Beerta, Netherlands. And what he would do is he would lure women in with what they call Lonely Hearts letters. If you're not familiar with these, because they have completely fallen, there's no reason for Lonely Hearts letters anymore, unless I feel like probably there's some old people that actually still put them in newspapers. But basically what you would do is some newspapers even had a Lonely Hearts section, but they're personal classified. So like male seeking male, woman seeking woman kind of thing. It's that, but like cleaner, I guess you would say. So it was more like a letter. As far as this is from what I know of them, and you would write like I'm a bachelor, divorced man of years, or widowed man of 32 years looking for love. I'm seeking a woman who understands basic woman shit. I don't know what the fuck these people would write, but they would write them. This is pre-Tinder, so you kind of just got what you could get. And it's also back in the day, if your husband died and you were a woman, man, your possibilities in life were slim to fucking none, just because of the way that society was set up. It wasn't anything to do with the women. They'd be hard workers and shit, but people just wouldn't give you a fucking job. And that shit didn't change until, World War II, when women started working in factories, and it kind of began the beginning of the end of the male-dominated workplace. Not to say, everything's perfect nowadays, but it's fucking completely different than it was back in the 1930s. And this is also, Depression era America, so people are extremely desperate. And he would send out these Lonely Hearts Club messages and lure women in. And he had an alias, and his alias was Cornelius O. Pearson, which I feel like is almost Cornelius, a person in my head. And the police eventually tracked him to Fairmont, West Virginia, and sentenced him to death for 5 murders, though he may have committed more. Obviously, this is back in the day. They caught you with what they could catch you on. This one woman that he was going after, I think her name was Dietrich. And he successfully managed to kill her. I think it was a caretaker or some close relative of hers. I should have written more of this down, but she was like, hey, she disappeared, and like, what the fuck? And so the cops kind of came and checked out everything and found these letters, managed to track him all the way back to Fairmont, Virginia. I think this woman was in New York City, as a matter of fact. So quite the travel. At the time, so this guy was arrested and he was taken to Moundsville, which is the former home, well, I guess it's still technically the home of the West Virginia State Penitentiary at Moundsville, what they used to call the old bucket of blood, and is the location of one of my stories from season 1, Carpenter Under Stone, which is, man, that's a fucking throwback. That shit came out like 4 years ago, dude. Isn't that wild? 3 years ago, at least. I digress. So, yeah, he was taken to Moundsville, which is basically the one kind of prison in West Virginia at the time, and it's a nightmare of a jail, dude. It is so gross and creepy. They filmed an episode of Mindhunter there. If you're familiar with the Mindhunter show, I know a lot of my listeners have seen that. If you remember the one with Speck is in Moundsville in that. I don't think he's in, like, literally in Moundsville, but he's actually at the building, which still exists, and you can do tours of it. People still film stuff. If you remember, in Mindhunter, where they step into this big cylindrical cage thing, the two detectives, Tench is the only one whose name I can remember because his name is great. But they step into this big cylindrical thing, and it rotates and lets them into the prison. That's a real thing, and you can actually get into it sometimes. And it was actually broken for years until they had it fixed. Basically, a production company came in, and it wasn't Mindhunter, it was a different one. And they wanted to film an episode of something in there, and the people showed them that, and they were like, what the fuck? That is awesome. So basically, it's what it is a cage, a cylindrical cage with one opening, and then there's like sort of walls and cage around it, and it rotates in. So it's always only got one side facing any area. So you can kind of like rotate prisoners in and out of it. It turns like a lazy Susan. But yeah, so the guys came in and they saw it and they're like, hey, can we fix that? Like, we'll pay to have that fixed if we can use it. And they're like, hell yeah, man. We run ghost tours through here. We'll take all the money we can get. But that's Moundsville. And so he was taken there back when it was still active and just full of, West Virginia's worst people, and a highly dangerous building. Extremely. You have to visit if you ever get a second, but I digress. And he was hanged in the old carriage house there, which is how they did executions until they built, I think it was a gas chamber. It might have been it was an electric chair. Duh, Tyler, you fucking idiot. You wrote a goddamn story about it. They built West Virginia's first electric chair there in the 1950s-ish. But before that, they would hang people in the carriage house, which you can still walk underneath. It's a big stone and wood building. And basically, there was just a drop out of the top, and it's, 30 some odd feet, and they'd plunk, and you'd fall right into the opening from the obscured area up top down. And that just leads right out onto like one of the main streets in Moundsville. So people would just like, oh fuck, they're doing an execution, and they wander over there from lunch and watch somebody drop and pop and and then you leave because it's 1931. It's not like you're getting on fucking Reddit for, for your lunch break or watching, a little bit of ESPN on your phone. You're like, what did you do today? I saw them fucking hang that serial killer. They didn't even call him a serial killer. It's Lonely Hearts Killer, freak show murderer, or something like that. Who knows? But Davis Grubb would have been 12 when that happened. I could easily... I tried to find some information of whether or not he would have gone over and watched the killing. It's as like as not that he would have seen it. I know from other stuff that I read about him that he had seen people get hanged there and stuff. It's pretty common. No one... it wasn't shocking there because half of the people in Moundsville worked at the prison, you know what I mean? And then a lot of people, I think it's something like 5 to 10% of the population of Moundsville were former prisoners because they just... So, I'm just going to fucking ramble about this because I love Moundsville so much, and I love West Virginia. In Moundsville, at the state pen, they would have something that they called them trustees, which is still something that sort of exists at different prisons throughout, America today. Although it's a little less common because our prison system has gone from being like the quaint old shitty fucking prisons of yore to like a nightmarish, industrial human rights grinder. But back then they would have people called trustees. So if you got arrested for murder, probably not going to be a trustee, but if you were in for something stupid like, assault or drunken disorderly, like simple assault, which is, fighting, beating somebody up, and you come to your terms, you've done like 6 or 10 years, and you've behaved yourself, they would let you leave the prison during the day and do different jobs around town. And so some people got good at different jobs around town. You're like, what do you do? Like, I work at the blacksmith. I'm a billows blower or some stupid shit like that. You'd end up getting a job at the blacksmith and just be like, what do you do? Like, oh yeah, I used to be in the prison, but I got a job now. Now I work in Moundsville, which I know this might sound a little bit, socialist of me, but maybe that's a better way of dealing with our prisoner problem than the one that we're doing right now, which is just slave labor. we use people for slave labor, teach them no trades. And then when they get out, they just have to tell everybody that they were a felon. And then say, what can you do? Like, well, I can commit crime, because you don't need much of a resume to be a criminal. You just know other criminals that can vouch for you, and you're in. And I actually happen to know hundreds, thousands actually, of other criminals. Oh. But anyway, yeah, so that was Moundsville, and that's where young Grubb was from at the time, young Davis. And so it's not hard to imagine him, watching this. He definitely heard about it. This is a crime in Fairmont, West Virginia. Small crimes in West Virginia or of a particularly gruesome nature, not a small petty crime, but rather a small town crime where you would think only a few people even know about it, still becomes massive news today. You know what I mean? People know what the fuck is going on, Cabin Creek. like everybody knows, oh yeah, that's the fucking, they're driving too fast past the school buses again. But he didn't write the story. Obviously he was 12 at the time. He didn't write the story until it was released in 1955, but I can imagine him just thinking about it all the time. This was his first novel. He published it when he was 34, and it was pretty much like the kind of beginning of the end of his very long-running career. He died in 1980. He wrote one other novel of note called Fool's Parade, which I believe I recommended all the way back in season 1, the first time I talked about Moundsville after Carpenter Under Stone. Fool's Parade is great. I like Fool's Parade better than Night of the Hunter. Maybe just because I haven't seen the movie. But Fool's Parade was actually filmed at the jail, which I think they did announce it. Yeah, oh yeah, it was shut down. During Fool's Parade, the jail was obviously still open, But the jail had been shut down, I think, permanently by the time it, or semi-permanently, like, so basically they shut down chunks of the jail as they built more modern facilities. And I think part of it was shut down and they actually were able to film inside of it. I know they have all kinds of relics from the filming and stuff down there in Moundsville, actually, in the museum inside the building. But Grubb just never really took off. He wrote some of his short stories, got published. Well, I mean, they got almost all of them got published to some degree, but a few of them got adapted by Hitchcock for one of Hitchcock's random shows, and by Rod Serling for one of his non-Twilight Zone shows. And then he kind of disappeared. He was like a real cool freak show of a dude. From what I understand, he lived in Clarksburg toward the end of his life. He lived in New York City actually for a while when he was actually kind of getting published. Fool's Parade was one of his last novels. I think it was like 4 before the end. And then Voices of Glory, which is my favorite book I have ever read, was his like 5th of, I think, a total of 9, and then, multitude of short stories. But Grubb, man, he would like, I think he wore like feathers in his hair and stuff. I really want to do like a big biography on him because he's so interesting. He's the biggest author, I think, to ever come from West Virginia, fiction author at least, period. Jeanette Walls would be the most famous author, at least of our time, because, fucking Glass Castle. Everybody, apparently people read that across the country in schools. I'd never heard of it until obviously I started dating Sam and she hipped me to West Virginia and I fell in love with the state. But yeah, Grubb kind of just faded into obscurity. And I remember there being reading stuff online when I was trying to learn more about him. It's hard to find. I can't even find fucking pictures of the dude, really. And just like there's one person that was kind of trying to keep the flame alive in the 80s and stuff, and 70s really, when Davis's health was fading. It's kind of on a sad note there, but it does play back into the rest of the film. So I'll talk about him some more later, possibly. As for the film was released in 1955, just a couple years after publication, directed by Charles Laughton, starring Robert Mitchum, Shelley Winters, and Lillian Gish as the grandmotherly lady at the end. Shelley Winters is the widow Marlowe, I believe, and Robert Mitchum plays the Harry Powers, the iconic love and hate tattooed on his fingers, dressed like a preacher and singing that fucking song, leaning, safe and secure from all alarm. God, dude, that shit is so fucking haunting. This is Charles Laughton's only directorial showing. He never directed anything else. The film is actually a box office and critical disaster. To understand more about that, you got to understand that in 1950s, the entirety of Hollywood was kind of going through like a series of massive changes. Things were changing from black and white to color almost permanently. You had, there's still the silent film days and like what they called like the studio system. There's a lot of musicals in the 1950s, and this is like a really serious film. It's wild how good it is. It's at the time only like people in Europe were using the types of shots that he uses, and they are stunningly beautiful even to this day. It's really fucking incredible how good it is, and the soundtrack works. Some of the criticism I've seen of it was that there's some tonally inconsistent funny parts, which I guess I can give it to you. There's a bit of slapstickery early in the show, but I personally think it works because at that point there is a sort of deviation from, not a deviation. Well, yeah, there's a deviation at the beginning between the sort of carefree existence of these children who live in Moundsville. Glory, I think, I don't know if they call it Glory in the movie, but it's in Davis's canon. Moundsville is always referred to as Glory, West Virginia, which I gave a nod to in everything that I write. You guys, no one aside from Carpenter under Stone, I don't think I talk too much about Glory, West Virginia, but as an homage to him, I always refer to Moundsville as Glory whenever I write about West Virginia, which is, neither here nor there. Let me get back to the discussion. So the kids have this sort of carefree children's life, as carefree as they can be in Depression era Appalachia. And Mitchum's character, this preacher, is just this disgusting, devious animal of a man. And you really get the feeling that he's almost animalistic. And all of his scenes are much, much darker. You know what I mean? But the townspeople are these sort of goofballs and stuff. But as the children's stories and Mitchum's stories begin to intertwine, you don't get much more of that slapstickiness, and it becomes very serious. And I think it works better as just kind of to jar you out. You know what I mean? I was talking about tonal consistency earlier in the show, but there are no hard and fast rules. You want to have a tonal consistency almost throughout, because hey, you want to have most songs stay in the same key throughout the entire song, but you can have key changes. And, the dissonance and assonance and all sorts of stuff like that. In this case, I think it makes a good change up from them as children becoming, these sort of fugitives from their own stepfather, who is, is pure evil. My favorite scene with him, and it's in the book too. I think it's done a little bit differently in the book. I haven't read. I put all these recommendations out. I do this a year ahead of time, and I haven't read the book in like 4 years now, which I do feel somewhat ashamed of. I wish it was a bit fresher in my mind, but I don't have the time to reread a whole book. But even in the movie, he hates women. Like they gross him out. Like female sexuality fucks with him. And there's just a scene where he's in, this theater and just like kind of thumbing his knife open and stuff. And it's just really powerful. And you contrast that with these kids like pop, 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 and their mother, who's just a fucking, a lonely old goofball of a woman. And then when they get together, things start getting darker and darker and darker. And then that's really when the movie starts for real. And it's got a feeling of almost movements, like in a greater musical piece, which I could kind of say Laughton probably understands. And he also, I should kind of take a digression there. So Laughton was actually an actor, and English, which is why he's not in this at all, because he's quite English. He's a Shakespeare guy, like a lot of those British actors are. And he was really famous for that. And he was in a bunch of movies too, but he was also in Shakespeare stuff. And if you know a lot about Shakespeare, you mix up. There's funny parts in everything. Every one of his plays basically has at least a little bit of comedy. I think maybe Caesar might not. Julius Caesar might not have much, but I think there's even jokes in that one. But it's part of the Shakespearean tradition to not take yourself too seriously and have a little bit of the old fig in there. So he also played a lot of antagonists, by the way. I'm just reading off my notes, which are completely disjointed. And Laughton never directed another show after this. And they said at the time that United Artists, who produced the film, had no idea what to do with it. It was considered really arty for the time. Today, I would say it's pretty middle ground. High end on the art side, but pretty middle ground as far as whether or not people would consider it, an art house picture. But at the time, people hadn't really seen stuff like this. They didn't know how to sell it, because they didn't really know what kind of genre it was in. horror wasn't really established. And honestly, Grubb's work kind of defies genre, which is why I think it's good. You should not try to write too hard to genre, even, and I'm going to give this advice to anybody that writes literature, quote unquote. Even you guys, need to step back every once in a while and break the rules, or just really establish your own rules for the kind of stories you want to tell. Grubb has a very defined style, and these movies fit into it. I don't know where I'm really going to. Oh yeah, but it is hard to tell. It's probably why Grubb didn't catch on very well back then. I feel like if he was around today getting published, he would have a much larger audience. It's just that back then, you had 4 or 5 outlets to get information to people, and those outlets would get clogged with money real quick. And so if it wasn't the big thing of the year, it wouldn't be a thing at all. You know what I'm saying? You had ABC, you had NBC, you had CBS. And, if you're not playing on those big 3, advertisement-wise, you're not playing at all. And they spent almost no money on advertising things. The few people that, reviewed the film didn't get it. And it kind of languished and died. And that might have killed Laughton's directing career, or he might have just been like, fuck this then. Which I probably would have been the same. But as a note, he usually did play antagonists, and he played or really dark or like stern, kind of dislikable characters. And he played Captain Bligh in Mutiny on the Bounty, which is based on the real life Mutiny on the Bounty, which is also the basis for my story, Oh Heaven. So that's kind of like a weird, neat come around right there. But man, so the movie's beautiful, and I love it. And it's just as good as the book. Honestly, a little bit better, which is rare for me to say. You usually hear that the book is almost always better than the story, and I think it's because in books, especially books that play to the strengths of the written word, you know what I mean? Like internal dialogue. A movie based on a book that is written in the first person, like what's that? Please, Tyler, American Psycho. It's hard to get that, because you're going to have that inner monologue going. That's like the best thing about American Psycho, is that the inner monologue is going all the time. And that's kind of like what gives you it. I love American Psycho, but the book is way better than the movie. And it's not that the movie's bad. It's just that the book just hits so much harder, because it's absolutely using that medium to its utmost. You're just right there in the brain of this psycho killer. And you can do that stuff with film, but it makes it much more avant-garde. It makes it much crazier when you try to do those booky type things with film, because on film everything has to be visual or audible to some degree. You know what I'm saying? So like, you can't just have text. I'm stumbling over trying to say this the correct way. What I'm trying to get at is, when you try to do these incredible things that people do with the written word, these little dancing bits and stuff, and you try to put them on film, sometimes you have to cut out things that are so crucial to what makes the story good that it just can never be as good. I would say Lolita. I've seen the Lolita film. It's never going to live up to Nabokov's fucking masterpiece of the English language, because you don't have Nabokov bouncing just fucking pure jazz every fucking sentence, every little typed bit of this, bit of that. My favorite line, I've probably said this in a bunch of different ones, but one of my favorite lines in the English language, or just a use of a word in the English language, is when he is describing a letter that the Lolita sent him, this Humbert character, who's the main character of Lolita man, how about how hard that was to say? Lolita is the main character of Lolita. He only ever calls the girl that. And I think she has a real name, but I can't remember it. And I don't think you're really intended to. Because, dude, I would honestly reread Nabokov just to talk about Lolita again. Maybe I will. But there's one use of a word, and it's sick. S-I-C in parentheses, which if you don't know, it's deep archaic English. SIC means that whatever, in parentheses, means that whatever was spelled before that word is being spelled like that on purpose. And you usually use it in something like a court document or possibly in journalism. When you append that to the end, it's basically to show that this spelling mistake is intentionally in there. And so, you know, him explaining that this girl made this adorable mistake puts SIC with an exclamation point. Sick! Like, can you believe what she said? And it's just at that moment, I loved it, and I was so happy that I saw that word being used, because it's one of those things when you're a writer, or at least even when you have like a big love of words, you want to use them. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just the same as with a musician. You know, if you learn a certain type of chord or a certain scale progression over a chord, you know, you're like, oh, this riff in Lydian just sounds awesome, but you don't have a whole story to put. You don't have a greater structure to insert that into. It's always it'll weigh on you, and you're like, oh man, I wish I could stick that in there. And I've always wanted to use SIC, because it's just to say that I did it. You know what I'm saying? Like, just to find where I can stick that little bit of a flourish. And I read Nabokov going on 14 years ago now. And, no, not 14. Jesus Christ, I'm not that old. Probably just like 8. Yeah, like 8 years ago. And, oh, Jesus Christ, it would have been 11. I know exactly. I know exactly when I read it. I read it in 2009. Jesus, I am that old. But you just want to find one specific place to find that flourish. And then I saw that word being used in this story like that, and it just blew my mind, and I absolutely loved it. But there's no way that you're going to ever be able to put that on film. It's utterly impossible. It's like trying to put, you know, Jonathan Coltrane's songs out in Morse code. It just doesn't make any sense. The opposite, or this idea is true going in an opposite direction. When people write about music, it's always weird. I love music. I grew up musically. I'm not like musically inclined, but some people might disagree with that. I don't feel like I am, but I do understand music. I've been playing it since I was 8, and there is just something about writing about music that is very, very difficult, to the point where sometimes you're just like, especially if you don't know that much about music or know too much about music, you should just say it was good. Say it was good and roll, because it's always these like descriptions that are like waves and surges, and then, you know, blah 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 blah. And it's never perfect. I mean, sometimes you just have to write about music, and then in that, just write about it. You know, hey, none of these are hard and fast rules. This is just me shitballing. But yeah, man, writing about music is hard. It's especially because it always almost all sounds the same, because song structure is very similar song to song. You know, the larger parts of what you're talking about, that, because, you know, there are these little parts and these big parts, and, you know, but you can't just say like, hey man, this is like 16 quarter notes in a row, but they were all slightly off beat, so they were hitting real perfect on that drum, like that. And, you know, so if you know all about the music, you can actually describe what's happening. It can come off very, very weird. Talking about music's good. I feel like if you hear somebody talking about music, you can kind of get it more because you can kind of feel their excitement and stuff. But once you go to something that's just as flat and black and white as text on the page, it just doesn't ever work that right. I'm blathering on at this point, and I have kept your guys' attention for too long, I believe. In summation, man, absolutely go see Night of the Hunter. The movie it's amazing, man. The use of the camera is absolutely perfect, almost throughout the entirety of the movie. You don't want to have glory shots pun, I guess, technically. You don't want to have, your glory shots everything. So they let you kind of slide into it. So you don't have to worry about, like, when you see a movie that's a little too artsy, like a Paul Thomas, is it Paul Thomas Anderson or just Paul Anderson? One of them is an extremely auteur director, and the other one is the guy that made fucking Resident Evil, and I can never tell them apart in my head. But if you watch a movie like The Master, which is, beautiful, just shot beautifully start to finish, but it's also 3 hours long, and you're like, I don't know if you needed to linger on that water for 5 minutes. You did, and you have the right to, because you are a wealthy and well-respected director, but did you need to? Did you really need to? You don't have to worry about any of that sort of overly artsy stuff. I don't think it's that long of a movie either. It might be. I can't remember. I don't remember it being long, so even if it is, I think you don't have to worry about getting bored. That's the real test. But all that aside, man, yeah, that's where we're going to wrap the episode. Thanks for sticking out with me. We're over 70 minutes at this point. I have talked about everything under the sun, and I hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, if you didn't, if you want to tell me to shut the fuck up, Tyler, mind your own business. Tyler, stop, for the love of God, talking shit about the things that I love. You fucking asshole. Write me at westsidefairytales@gmail.com. Tell me it was good. Tell me it was bad. Tell me you want me to talk about more stuff, other stuff. Just write me. Maybe I'll read your comments and concerns live on the air. And maybe I'll just be hurt. I'll just go crawl into my bed and wish that I'd never asked people to write me in the first place. Also, you can get to me at facebook.com/westsidefairytales, at WSFairytales on Twitter. And as I said before, please, please, please consider supporting us on Patreon or by buying some merchandise at our store, westsidefairytales.com/merch. Links are in the episode descriptions. You should be able to just click on them and they will send you right there. Please come back in about 2 weeks. We're going to have the new story waiting for you. This one is called The Move, and it's about a moving crew that has a job to do at a large, frightening mansion in the hills around Portland, Oregon. And, they get in there, some shit happens. You know how it is. This is a horror and dark fiction podcast. It's not going to have a happy ending for all those characters. I think you should check it out. That's going to be on the first Friday of April. And until then, as always, stay safe out there. Westside Fairytales is written, read, scored, and produced by Tyler Bell. Episode artwork by Yui Breedlove. All content herein, copyright 2020 WSF Productions, LLC.